Every week, we bring to you a specific topic based episode in which we discuss in detail the intricacies of business, economy, and international affairs taking place all over the globe. But in this year end special episode, we thought to bring to you something different. So instead of discussing a specific topic, let's go over the major events, tribulations, and significant policy undertakings which took place over the course of 2022 in order to comprehend the economic, business, and geopolitical reverberations and repercussions and witness how we all have fared to the year so going to pass by. Number 1. The India-China face-off continues. With the ever-growing tensions at the line of control, there was yet another China-India clash which took place in December at Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh, after more than a year since the previous incident at Gangwan Valley. Now the news channels and media might disseminate you the information all wrapped up in reasons such as competition among the nations to build infrastructure along the protracting and disputed line of control. But to put it into perspective, let's list down the analysis based as nails which provide a better understanding of the sudden Chinese move. Firstly, since Xi Jinping was contesting his seat for the premiership for a third term, so it was imperative for him to consolidate his position as a strong ruler to his people, which is clearly reflected from not only the Taiwan clash with India, but rather the Taiwan hoopla with USA, after Nancy Pelosi's visit to the semiconductor birthing nation. Secondly, this image of an aggressive leader also served as a narrative of patriotic resolution in order to placate the angry Chinese population who has been suffering with the unruly zero-COVID policy and the slipping Chinese economy, which has led to stalling growth momentum. And thirdly, to test the reach, responsiveness and control of the Indian army in the eastern part of the nation after India's vigorous kickback in Ladakh and Kashmir. So no matter how many times and how hard the Chinese try, they will surely not be able to get the strategic edge they might have been looking for. Rather, it's providing India with more fervor to enhance its border infrastructure and continue capacity development in maritime domain. Let us know in the comments below if you want us to make a full-fledged video on the topic in the future. Number 2. The Ukraine-Russia war and the ensuing European energy crisis. Without going into depth about the reasons behind Ukraine-Russia war, since it has been widely covered already, and I'm sure we all are aware of the history, we should focus on the consequences of the war which has had the world face the fair share of the brunt of it. Following the sanctions imposed on Russia by the Western nations, Russia in retaliation cut the gas supply to the European Union, which initially used to receive 1/3 of its gas from the nation. The dependency is evident from the chart here, which upon observation shows that most of the countries falling on higher verticals are the European nations, while the Asian countries had the least dependency on Russia. Similarly, if you look at this chart, it specifically depicts that between May and October, Russia stopped its Nord Stream pipeline flow and Turk Stream flow, which provided gas to the European Union and Turkey respectively. And as a result, constraining the flow by 80%, leaving the regions to face significant shortfall and sky-high energy prices as a result. Now this might not appear to be such an eyebrow-raising scenario as of yet, but if we look at the fact that winter is already reaching its peak in Europe, as per reports from economists which are depicted in this graph, owing to the lack of heating, the situation and harshest of forecasts predicts 260 people for every 1 million people dying in Europe, which on a continent scale corresponds to almost 2 lakh deaths per week. And that is how a war between just two nations is having its repercussions across the world. Number 3. The looming economic crisis of 2022. As the world was starting to achieve normalcy post a pandemic which the modern world has never witnessed before, nations across the world witnessed a crude shock when it saw a total 180-degree turn in the global concerns, which shifted from COVID-19 infliction and unemployment to intense inflation and poverty. Amongst the big reasons for the shift are commodity supply constraints, which are unable to fulfill the extraordinary demand post the pandemic, and the consequences of war on the oil and energy prices has created supply chain risk and disturbances through and through. To put this scenario into statistics, Israel, A country whose inflation rate stood at 0.13% in Q1 2020 has witnessed the fastest inflation growth with a 25 times increase in inflation rate, with figures reaching above 5% in 2022. The US, the dollar-denominated superpower, has been witnessing a 40-year high inflation with rates peaking over 8%, which is 4 times its level in Q1 2020. Turkey has been the worst hit nation so far at the hands of inflation, where the people saw 25-year high levels, standing at 85.5%. India itself witnessed a more than 7% inflation rate this year because of increased consumption in rural areas and higher food commodity prices. If we consider the fact that on an average, our normal inflation rates hover around 6%, our economy has fared well in comparison to other countries. However, inflation has still eroded the Indians' pockets, as they have been dealing with the RBI's consecutive interest rate hikes, which has put a barrier on the consumer purchasing power and the economic growth in turn. Number 4. The 45 Days PM. Newly appointed Prime Minister of UK, Liz Truss, had to step down from her position in just a matter of 45 days, which earned her the distinction of being the shortest serving British Prime Minister. So let's try to wrap up the key reasons in the most optimized way we can. Firstly, the PM was accused of false promises to the cost of living crisis-stricken people of the nation when she introduced the infamous mini budget. The budget, which was supposed to provide assistance and support to the energy price guarantee along with the cost savings, veered off blatantly to abolish 45% top rate of income tax for people on income of 1.5 lakh pounds or higher. Secondly, the mini budget also slashed revenue sources when a policy was introduced with the proposal to scrap a planned increase in corporate tax from 19% to 25% starting next year, which evidently depicted her as a subservient of the rich and corporate class. And thirdly, to make matters worse, these policies in conjunction led to a dramatic increase in the yield of the 10-year government bonds. Now for a short version of understanding here, an increase of yield on bond means the cost of borrowing of the government issuing the bonds increased. And in UK's case, it ultimately meant that market lost confidence in UK's economy and government, since they believed that the debt levels were unsustainable and government incapable to mitigating it. And it was only after the Bank of England intervened and came rushing to the nation's rescue with the £65 billion bond buying program that the situation could be placated. But it had become too late for Ms. Truss, who then was forced to step down and make way for the famous Mr. Rishi Sunak. Number 5. Economic crisis in India's neighborhood. The Indian subcontinent has witnessed a great deal of economic distress and numerous economic crises this year, with Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Bangladesh all trying to secure loan grants from either international bodies like IMF or succumbing to China for what could be termed as blackmail in its simplest form. So let's try to summarize quickly what led to the doom which befell our neighbor. Number 1. Sri Lanka fell prey to its highest inflation ever, with figures reaching beyond 65% in 2022. The country took a very myopic approach with focus only on its domestic goods provisions and markets and did not pay any attention to boosting of foreign trade, which led the country's import bills to pile up and eventually the foreign reserves depleting to an all-time low of $250 million, which in economic terms is almost nil. Number 2. Sri Lanka's bad shape is also touted as an outcome of the government's mismanagement. The government has been deemed corrupt by its people and is said to have taken large sums of money in the form of loans from abroad for public services, but utilizing these for their own personal gains, thereby leaving the country in debt. Number 3. Pakistan has a different story altogether, and you can check out our video on Pakistan's economic collapse via the link in the description below. But to tell you about it in short, Pakistan has had a long-standing problem of military's discrete power control, political instability and terrorism freelancing, which has brought the country to such a sorry state that it has taken loan from IMF 22 times in the past 60 years and still is in a state of asking for more to fund its economic expenses. To top this, the country has been facing numerous climate-related challenges, with floods destroying whatever infrastructure and simpler living the people have been struggling to hold on to. Number 4. Bangladesh is a curious case out of the lot of 3 countries, since it does not vividly put out that it is facing an economic crisis, but rather keeps focus on whatever small achievements and strides the country keeps on making domestically, such as the opening of its largest bridge, which is supposedly a symbol of self-reliance. But when the country knocks on IMF's door for a $4.5 billion request, or the World Bank for a $1 billion loan, or $3 billion from multilateral agencies and donor nations such as Japan International Cooperation Agency, this obviously shouts of either an ongoing economic crisis or one that's impending tomorrow. Number 6. The Qatar FIFA controversy. If Qatar winning to host the FIFA World Cup back in 2010 was not enough of controversy the country could get itself embroiled in, the nation faced a ton of backlash for not just one, but multiple reasons and could not elicit the reverence the country was expecting FIFA to bring. So let's cover these in summary one by one. First of all, after a lot of insinuations thrown at Qatar for literally bribing and buying the hosting privilege, the United States started investigations and unsealed indictments against 9 FIFA officials. And later on, in April of 2020, Justice Department released fresh evidence suggesting that 3 FIFA officials accepted bribes from unnamed intermediaries to vote for Qatar. Secondly, with critics and human rights organizations' efforts, the shocking revelation was made about the deeply exploitative nature with which the low-wage migrant workers were kept and treated. These workers were employed through a notoriously forced labor system known as the kafala or sponsorship system, which bound workers to a sponsor through a series of legally binding contracts and gave the employers an inordinate amount of power over workers' lives. In fact, the consequences of this have been so deadly that in 2021, The Guardian reported that more than 6,500 workers from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka had died in Qatar since 2010. Thirdly, the country faced immense amount of backlash on its conservative and backward thinking for its laws against LGBT and women groups. The backlash resulted in the origins of the One Love armbands, which were voluntarily decided to be worn by the captains of England, Wales, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany and Denmark in order to convey a message against discrimination of any sorts. But were told by FIFA they would be booked if they did so. Thus, Qatar might perceive the World Cup to have provided them with the soft power they were seeking. But in actuality, the country miserably failed to do so, and its sports washing agenda has been left in the dust. Number 7. The Queen departs. The UK saw the passing of its longest reigning monarch, who ruled the UK for 70 years and then passed away at the age of 96. One of her greatest achievements is said to have brought a stability to the monarchy, which went through varying vicissitudes. Her ability to address crowds of different designations and strata brought about a feeling of emphatic proudness to the people of UK, which can be illustrated by the moment when she became the first monarch to address a joint session of the United States Congress, and where her speech garnered sheer love and admiration. Although there are critics who have been in open despise of her position and command, but her efforts to bind the Commonwealth nations together for so long and presenting the British monarchy as the servants of the people instead of rulers or hereditary aristocrats has been lauded by both the Britons as well as the people across the world. And that was all for today's episode, everyone. If you liked this special episode, stay tuned for the second part, where we'll be discussing the major events from a more domestic perspective. Till then, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button below. I'll be seeing you all in the next episode. Mindfulness signing off.